Today, this organization is this seminar is organized by Bhaktivedanta Research Center in collaboration with Kolkata Society of Asian Arts, Asian Studies. I'm sorry. So the first session is taken by Dr. Sarvishta Devasu. She is the secretary of KSAS, and our honorable speaker today is Dr. Amit Dey. Ma'am, please take over the session.
Thank you, Shivangi. Welcome, Professor Amit Dey. I am just introducing you for the session, and you are heartily invited for this session. Dr. Amit Dey is a professor of history, the Department of History, Center for Advanced Studies, University of Calcutta, India. Formerly, he was the head of the Department of History and present MPhil coordinator, Calcutta University. He received a PhD in history in September 1999 from the University of London for his work on the image of the Prophet in Bengali Muslim painting 1850 to 1947, and completed his doctoral research as a Commonwealth Scholar, being affiliated to the Department of History, Royal Holloway, University of London. His area of specialization is Islam and Islamic mysticism in medieval and modern South Asia. He published 4 valuable books: Sufism in India in 1996, The Image of the Prophet in Bengali Muslim Deity 1850-1947 in 2006, Islam in South Asia in 2016, and one co-edited book, Between Tradition and Modernity, Aspects of Islam in South Asia in 2011. Professor Dey is the co-editor of the Bengali academic journal Iti Kotha and the resident editor of Indo-Iranica. The Comprehensive History of India Society, CHIS, has selected him as a joint editor for volume 10. They has published over 50 articles on Islam and Islamic mysticism in academic journals. He delivered lectures in famous institutions of India and abroad. Nearly 33 scholars have successfully completed their PhD or MPhil researches under his supervision. At present, 8 scholars are carrying out their PhD or MPhil research under his supervision. Apart from examining PhD theses submitted in Indian and foreign universities, Professor Dey also acted as subject expert during the selection of assistant professors, associate professors, and professors in Indian and foreign universities. Recently, he served as a visiting professor in Northeastern Hill University and Vishwabharati, West Bengal. Now I invite Professor Dey to deliver his lecture on perspectives on the meditating Muslim mystics of India. Over to Professor Dey.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvishta Devasu, for a very generous introduction. I'm extremely grateful to Bhaktivedanta Research Center and Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for giving me this opportunity to share my views on the perspectives on mending mystics in the South Asian context. I am particularly grateful to Dr. Tinni Goswami and Dr. Shantanu Dey, who communicated with me and also motivated me to share my views on this very challenging topic, because I'll be speaking about a period when such sophisticated terms like stress, like psychiatry, like psychology, like stress management, such terms were not used. But people had crises, various forms of crisis, and they also had their own mechanism to encounter such crises. So I thought that I can fit into such a program in this international webinar. I'm also uh, offering my thanks, heartfelt thanks to my long-term friend, the keynote speaker, Ferdinando Sardella, whom I know for quite some time, who visited our university. I visited his university in Sweden. So without wasting much time, there's a time constraint. I will directly go into the topic. That is perspectives on the mending mystics. Mending means those who acted as healers. By healing, I definitively mean physical healing as well as mental healing, psychological healing. So, what role did these Muslim mystics play so far as this issue of healing is concerned? That we shall try to explore for nearly half an hour, and then I shall encounter questions for a lively interactive session. Now, I just start my talk by saying that symbols are very important for a proper understanding of the ways in which the medieval mystics have aspired to respond to certain questions relating to the crisis that engulfed society in the medieval period, or to be more precise, in the pre-modern period, in the pre-industrial period. Now, great scholars, great Indologists, or great Orientalists like Reynold Nicholson, Thomas Arnold, Arthur J. Arbery, they were not interested in Ottoman military turban. So I have mentioned that symbol is very important. I draw your attention to this significance of symbols when you understand this role of the Sufis or mystics, so far as the role of Sufis as healers is concerned. So there are two types of turbans. This is significant because Sufism is an offshoot of Islam. It is based on the concept of monotheism. But if you look at the symbols used by Sufism, each and every, in spite of their focus on monotheism, the symbols carry dual meanings within Sufism. For example, there are dual meanings of the turban that is used in Islam. One turban is used by the Turkish army. It is also used by the monarchs of the Turkish army or the Muslim army which invaded South Asia. That is one type of a turban which had temporal or political connotation. But there is another turban. We are interested in the second type of turban, that is the mystical turban. This is also known as Mushkil Asan. In popular terminology, these healers were also known as Mushkil Asans. That is, they cure the challenges everyday in everyday life that common people would face. They can cure such problems. This is the understanding, Mushkil Asan. So we are interested in this second symbol, second turban used by the mystics. So the Occident, that is the Western world, exoticized the turban of the mystic mentors of Terra Australis Incognita. That is, the Oriental world was perceived by the West, by the Indologists, by the Orientalists, by the experts, by the anthropologists as Terra Australis Incognita, unknown land of the East. And the Occidental scholars had the right, legitimate right, they believe, to explore the Oriental world, to explore the mystery, to define the Oriental world, and to classify the Oriental world. So an Orientalist is not an Easterner. An Orientalist is a person, a scholar from the Western world. That is very much important. So Terra Australis Incognita had to be explored. In support of my hypothesis, I would say look at the novels. Charles Dickens, Great Expectations, Jules Verne, Round the World in 80 Days, or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, all have exoticized the Orient. I do not have the time to delve deep into that, but in support of my hypothesis, I use this as my entry point. So when this exoticization of the Oriental world is concerned, under such circumstances, this mystical symbol, this turban, occupied a predominant position because this turban had been used by the mystic mentors or the uh, mending mystics of pre-industrial South Asia. That is my argument. So now, what is the symbolic significance of this elongated turban? Elongated turban, not ordinary turban, elongated turban used by the Mevlevi dervish who would dance anti-clockwise. This is not an ordinary turban. This resembles the tomb on a grave. So underneath the grave, underneath the tomb, the body of a saint is buried. It may be a Sufi saint, it may be a Christian mystic like Saint Francis of Assisi or anyone. What is the function of this Sufi turban? This elongated turban, it resembled a tomb, resembled a grave. Just like underneath the grave, you bury the body of a departed saint, underneath the tomb-like turban, you are supposed to bury your ego. Unless you bury your ego, you cannot become a mystic. Now, once you bury your ego, then what is left? Love is left. Once ego is buried, love is left. No, love is the prime mover so far as this healing process is concerned. So far as the activities of this medieval mending mystics are concerned, love is very important. Ishq. So love is important. Love is important in, across the religious experiences, as you know, whether it is Jainism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, whatever. You will find that love occupies a pivotal position in this healing process. So love is very much important. Love can make you laugh. So with this laughter, you can encounter your stress. That is your potentiality to distress is fortified by laughter, and laughter can be generated by pure love. So love is very important, and love is sustained by the mending mystics of South Asia. And love cannot be defined or contemplated if you exclude the feminine dimension of love. So our entry point would be the female Sufis. This is very significant. I draw your attention to the fact that when the mending mystics emerged in pre-industrial societies in South Asia, pre-modern societies in South Asia, they portrayed the images of the mothers of the Sufis, of female Sufis, as their role models. Because when you face tension, stress, crisis in the masculine external world, you take refuge in the Zenana, in the Andar Mahal, in the internal world of your home, which is dominated by female presence. So this femininity has to be kept at the back of our mind when you understand the nature of this mending process in the pre-industrial societies. So now, again, as I've mentioned, that there are two types of turbans, and Sufis are interested in these dual meanings of symbols that I've mentioned: temporal symbol, spiritual symbol. Similarly, darbars or courts also carry dual meanings. One is the monarchical darbar, another is the Sufi darbar. Now, healing process is sustained in the Sufi darbar, not in the monarchical darbar. Monarchical darbar is the representative of tension. It represents tension. It represents competition in the official hierarchy, in the bureaucracy for higher positions, for promotions, for warfare, and so on, for gains, for material and mundane gains. But you will have spiritual solace and peace in the darbar of the Sufi. So you have to juxtapose the monarchical darbar with the mystical darbar. Darbar means court. So that's why these dual meanings are very important. Kingly darbar is associated with war, bloodshed, loss, displacement, tension for promotion in the bureaucracy, and it is dominated by ego. But the ishq that is resonated in the Sufi music, Sama or Qawwali, that is very much important. So Darvishi Darbar is associated with humility, luminous serenity, love, music and poetry. All sorts of creative, engaging activities will be carried forward in the peaceful environment of the Sufi Darbar. That I'm interested in the Sufi Darbar. I'm not interested in the monarchical Darbar. So external masculine world was violent. Um, and Zenana world, or that is Andar Mahal, was spiritual. That was feminine world. Inner Durga world was feminine, it was peaceful, it was spiritual. So non-violent nature of women prompted Gandhi to mobilize women in the non-violent non-cooperation movement. And I do not have the time, but it is a very interesting note to take down. That is, Gandhi was interested in Sufism and particularly the healing power of the Sufis. But I do not have the time to delve deep into that. And Gandhi often acted as a folk doctor. That is very interesting. Now, uh, these notions, this terminology in the Persian lexicon confirms the Sufi concern with love. And with this focus, pinning their hope on love, they try to encounter the stress. So this love is a stress buster in society. So Ishq and Mashuk, such Persian terms, gained prominence in the Sufi Darbar. That is very much important. With this notion of love, the Sufis, the mending mystics encountered stress, displacement, warfare, violence, loss in society. The most famous example is also in Quranic Surah number 12, where uh, the Quran is speaking about the enrapturing power of love. I do not have the time to delve deep into that. The enrapturing power of love is manifested in the Surah 12 of Quran, and that is cited by the Sufis again and again and again. That is very much important. It can even be said that Sufism was more favorable to the development of feminine activities than were other branches of Islam. The sympathy of the Prophet for women and his four daughters had been recorded. That is very significant. The veneration of Fatima, that is the beloved daughter of the Prophet, in Shia circles is indicative of the important role that could be assigned to the feminine element in Islamic religious life. So this is very much important. You know the famous Qawwali song, Damaddam Mas Kalandar, Ali da Pahla Number. This Ali is the husband of Fatima, the beloved daughter of the Prophet. Fatima is the symbol of mystical Islam in South Asia. Fatima is the symbol of the Indian countryside. So far as Indian countryside is concerned, countryside is represented by Fatima, Ma Barkat, the auspicious mother of the countryside. Very important. Now, there are different types of portrayal of the image of Fatima as a healer. Fatima, during the time of warfare, during the time of community building exercise, Fatima's image has been. Fatima never visited India, but she is very popular among the Sufis. Many Sufis are known as Fatimas. They would take the name Fatima. And even today, Fatima name is very popular in South Asia. Particularly in Iran, you will find Fatima is very popular. This name is very popular. Now, Fatima is compared with Florence Nightingale, the famous nurse in the history of mankind, as you know. Fatima is compared with, her compassion is comparable to Florence Nightingale, who acted as a non-combatant during warfare, as you know. So Fatima is the role model for Muslim women in South Asia and also beyond. And again, in the Indian countryside, Fatima is portrayed as Ma Barkat, that is the auspicious mother. There are jari songs or folk songs which just put emphasis on the healing property of Fatima, the beloved daughter of the Prophet. And Fatima is the representative of mystical Islam. So very much important. I'm giving you just one example from the Bengal countryside in the 19th century. So I cannot resist the temptation resist the temptation from reciting this song. Aire Meg Rani, Thang Dhui Dhui Phala Pani, Bibi Fatima Khoje Pani, Allah Tui Dere Pani. That is when there is a drought in South Asia. People sing in the name of the Queen of Clouds, that is Fatima, give us rain. Now this is the commonality. This is the comparative theological perspective we have to understand in the crisis period nowadays in the 21st century. I need not define, I need not elaborate by crisis what I mean, but you all understand by crisis what I mean. So during this crisis period, we have to study comparative theology. So here in Shodharma Pundarika of the Buddhist, Lord Buddha is projected as the merciful rain cloud. In other parts of the Islamic world, the Prophet is projected as the rain cloud. And in South Asia, Fatima, the beloved daughter of the Prophet, is projected as the rain cloud. So these are important comparative studies that we have to take care of. The very fact that the first true saint of Islam was a woman was Rabia Basri of 8th century. Basra. So this is very much important. So Rabia is the role model for the Muslim healers, mystical healers in South Asia. She was the epitome of spiritual activities. So it is not surprising when Sheikh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Dehlavi, he is a contemporary of Jahangir. He was not very successful in securing a royal favor. So he was a failure at the royal darbar, that is royal court. So he took refuge in the Sufi darbar, that is the Sufi code, which had spiritual connotation, spiritual implication, as I have implied quite earlier. So here, Abdul Haq Muhaddis Dehlavi, who was not successful materially, he wanted to be successful spiritually. So he devoted an entire chapter in his famous book to female Sufis as healers, as mending mystics of South Asia. So this is very much important. And the famous manuscript is known as entitled Akbarul Akhir. That is a 16th century manuscript. Now, Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, the most illustrious Chisti Sufi of South Asia, used to say that when the lion emerges from a jungle, none raises any question about her sex, because the primary concern of the human being at that point of time is his personal safety and security. No one will carry out a research to find out whether that someone that is coming out from the jungle is a lion or a lioness, because the lioness is actually the principal predator in lion society. It would be relevant to study the role of the mothers in the biographies of the Sufis. Many religious leaders admitted that they received their first religious instruction and even their preliminary training in the mystical path from their mothers. The Prophet said, "Paradise lies at the feet of the mothers." This was emulated by the Indian Sufis. Uh, Mothers as mentors. So whether it is Baba Fariduddin Ganji Shakkar or mother of Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, there is no doubt that many elderly women in the families of the Sufis contributed significantly to the spiritual formation of some of the greatest Sufi saints of South Asia. This is very interesting. On one occasion, I'm giving you one example, the healing qualities of the Sufi mother. On one occasion, there was a drought in Delhi. Everybody began to pray for rain, and the Sheikh was requested to do likewise. The Sheikh means Sufi Sheikh, Sufi mentor. The Sheikh then took a thread from a garment worn by his mother. He held it in his hand and began to pray, "Oh God, the chastity of my mother is well known. She had never unveiled her face before the strangers. And I am praying on behalf of this pious lady. Please send rain for us." After hearing the Sheikh's appeal, God sent rain for them. So in this way, even when there was a natural calamity, the healers were the Sufis, the Sufi mothers. So this is very much important. Now, I move into another dimension. I am arguing that both the elite elements within Sufism as well as the non-elite elements, folk elements, popular elements within Sufism, they were interested in this sort of mending qualities or the healing qualities of the Sufis. For example, in Sufi circles, Charkhanama is very popular. That is the spinning wheel. While using the spinning wheel, the Sufi songs or Sufi poetry is sung. Sufi poetry is often singable. So Charkhanama, that is known as Charkhanama. And then while grinding the food grain, the rod, iron rod is used. Iron rod resembles the letter Alif, Alif for Allah. So this is the spiritual connotation. So your everyday existence, your sustenance is provided by this sort of rudimentary elements. And these sort of rudimentary elements acquire spiritual dimensions as they are compared with mystical letters and something like that. There are other types of songs. I'm not going into that because I'm quite aware of the time constraint. Just for valid reason, I the elite dimension, the famous poet Omar Khayyam, in his Rubayati Omar Khayyam, he is saying to drink wine and to be happy is my religion. And when the ulama shouted at him, he said, "No, I am speaking about a different sort of a wine. If you look at my wine cup from 90-degree angle, the handle of the wine cup resembles the letter Alif, Alif for Allah." So this is spiritual intoxication. This is the improvising nature of the mending mystics. He was a versatile genius, Omar Khayyam. So he encountered the crisis created by the very violent, very aggressive ulama by saying there's no, there's a creative element, spiritual element attached to my concept of wine, my definition of wine. So he could save the day by just uttering that couplet by and by focusing on the spiritual implication of that couplet. Similarly, there are medicinal qualities in many Persian texts used by the Sufis. For example, I can mention Sheikh Sadi Shirazi, who never came to India, but his poetry and his writings did. Like Gulstan and Bostan came to India and became very popular. So Sadi used to say, Khurdan barai jistan, jistan barai khurdan nist. That is, I I eat for my survival and not the vice versa. I eat only for my survival and not the vice versa. This is the Aristotelian philosophy translated into practice by the Sufi-oriented scholars like Sadi Shirazi. He's saying that prevention is better than cure. He's saying that prevention is better than cure. So in this way, uh, whether it's a question of health or whether it's a question of mental faculty, the Sufis acted as healers in pre-industrial South Asian society. Nizamuddin Aulia had this deep respect for his mother. He used to say, Walida Mara ba Khuda Ta'ala Asnai Bud. My mother was the way towards the kingdom of God. So in this way, when there was a crisis in the external masculine world, they sought refuge in the feminine, spiritual, internal world. So, and you have to understand that Nizamuddin Aulia came to India with his mother, and Nizamuddin Aulia was a Turk, so was his mother. And among some of the Turkish tribes, matriarchy is very powerful. Matriarchal system is very powerful. So when Bibi Zuleika, the mother of Nizamuddin Aulia, came to India, Sultana Razia was ruling, and Razia was also a Turk. So this is quite common among some of the Turkish tribes, as I've mentioned. So this is the gender dimension, very important among the Sufis who had some Turkish lineage. That is my argument. The devotees of Raushan Bibi of Bengal have built a beautiful Durga as a mark of their devotion. The trustee of the Durga have kept the place very neat and clean, and incense is also burnt regularly at the Durga. So this is the healing quality. In everyday life, you may be a failure, but you take refuge within the peace and solace of the Durga of Raushan Bibi in Bengal. So they offer flowers for spiritual solace. They offer flowers, fruits, and sweets at the Durga as minnat or manot. Every year in the Bengali month of Chaitra, Urs or death anniversary is celebrated here with much enthusiasm. On this occasion, a fair is also held here, which lasts for nearly 10 days. More than 1 lakh people visit this fair, and they are entertained by the bandsmen, kawal singers, and the night sky beautifully decorated with fireworks. So this is a form of respite from the everyday competitive world, everyday story, everyday saga of failure and competition and stress. So this is a refuge. Refuge is sought at the Durga of the Sufi shrine, and sometimes at the Sufi shrine of a female Sufi like Raushan Ala of Bengal. So in this way, I know the time is ticking out for me. I will just wind up by highlighting certain important points. So what I'm trying to say is that comparative theology is very important in 21st century crisis, the crisis we are facing in South Asia and perhaps beyond. It is a well-known fact that Mian Mir was a Sufi saint who laid the foundation stone of Harmandir Sahib of the Sikhs. So there was exchange, theological exchange between different religious sects, the Sikhs, the Sufis, the Hindus, and the Muslims, and others. They exchanged ideas in this way. So this is very much important. So when there was tension in the external world, the Sikhs were fighting the Mughals in the battlefield, in a pitched battle, in a guerrilla warfare. They were taking refuge in the shrine of Sufi Mian Mir and allowed Sufi Mian Mir to lay the foundation stone of Harmandir Sahib of the Sikhs. So there was competition at the political level, at the mundane, materialistic level, but there was collaboration at the spiritual level. That is the important dimension which we have to understand. So Jahanara, the Mughal princess, the daughter of Shah Jahan, was a great scholar, and she was initiated into Sufism and wrote a book. I am not elaborating. I'm just saying that she wrote a book, Munisul Arwa. If I translate that into English, it will be comforter of souls. In this way, female Sufis and female scholars emerged in the pre-industrial societies, pre-modern societies as the comforter of souls. So the feminine dimension is very important. I draw your attention to this fact. I'm winding up, and now let us come to the colonial period. The Baul fakirs of Bengal were considered as folk doctors, and Bauls trace their origin from the Chishti Sufis. By the rural people considered them as folk doctors, and they had knowledge about medicinal herbs and plants in the Bengal countryside. It was believed that these ambulatory mendicant singers had knowledge about these indigenous medicinal plants and were familiar with other forms of healing. Uh, Under Tantric, Yogic, and Sahajiya Buddhist influence, they put emphasis on the human body, which is the abode of God, and where pilgrimage can be performed. That is, pilgrimage can be performed on the human body. This is cost-effective, user-friendly pilgrimage, or the alternative pilgrimage from the perspective of the rural poor. The rural poor can perform the pilgrimage that is expensive. They can travel to the distant land. For them, there is a user-friendly mode of pilgrimage that can be performed within the human body. So this sort of adjustment had been made by the Bauls, who came to the rescue of the rural people who could not afford to perform the Hajj in a distant place. And Hajj is also very expensive. So this emphasis on the human body ensures the longevity of Lalon Shah, who would live for 120 years in spite of being attacked by smallpox during his youth, while his contemporary Raja Rammohn Roy would die a premature death because of the tensions associated with the urban existence in Kolkata. Lalon Fakir's songs and philosophy had healing properties, so the rural peasant appears with a smiling face in spite of sliding into the death trap spread by the Mahajan in the Bengal countryside. That is why the Murshids and the Marifati singers were not merely acting as folk philosophers, but they also played the role of folk psychiatrists. Sufi Nizamuddin Aulia or Bulle Shah's familiarity with certain yogic practices is well known. They tried to reconcile the spiritual quest of their clients with the challenges of turbulent times. So it is not surprising that after being deprived of privilege, prestige, and power, the celebrated court historian Ziauddin Barani had to take shelter in the serene lodge of Nizamuddin Aulia. Contrarily, the tremendous material success of poet Amir Khusru also left a void which could only be filled up by his spiritual mentor Nizamuddin Aulia. The present paper aimed at studying how the Murshids tried to offer peace, solace, and self-confidence to their clients and followers during their perennial quest for identity. You have been listening to me for quite some time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We are really impressed, and it is a very thoughtful your lecture. You established that immediately that how the Murshids and Marfati singers act as folk philosophers and folk psychiatrists at the same time. As we all know, the effect and influence of songs and philosophy of Lalan Fakir on Rabindranath Tagore. He explained that how these songs healed the poor peasants of Bengal and helped them to overcome all the sufferings. And this is also important issue.
Sure.
So I cannot see here any question from the audience. I have one question from your lecture that I just want to share. That you told that you abstract that the tantric yogis and the Sahajiya Buddhist from tantric yogis and Sahajiya Buddhist, the Sufis are influenced about the human body there. So is it that, or from the folk traditions, the folk philosophers the yogis and the Sahajiya Buddhists were influenced. It is vice versa, or so. What is your opinion?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shormishta Devasu, for your query. Actually, we have to take a larger canvas for our understanding of this process. For example, starting from Punjab down to Bengal, you will find ambulatory yogis. Yogis used to move from one place to another. So tantric Sahajiya Buddhist ideas, which got mixed up with this sort of yogic ideas in northwestern India, upper India, and sometimes they came back to Bengal and spread such ideas. And they had interactions with this 19th century Baul fakirs and others, of course. But I'm concentrating on the Baul fakirs. So that's why the Baul fakirs, in a very pragmatic way, put emphasis on the body. That is, you need not go to Kashi Brindavan or to Makkah
Yeah,
Medina for to perform Hajj or to
yeah,
perform pilgrimage. You can perform pilgrimage in your own body, because if you carefully search your body, you will find God in your body yourself. Actually,
yeah,
this is very significant, because I did not get the time to elaborate, because this is integral to the identity formation process of the rural people. Very much important, because rural people are not sharing the culture of Calcutta or the urban pockets of Bengal, but they are being provided with a philosophical outlook, which convinced them that they were not riff-raff people. They were also very important, and without the help of the religious mediators like the mullahs or the brahmins or the purohits, they can become a part of the spiritual process by
yeah,
sanctifying their body. So this is a form of pre-industrial individualism, I would say. This has nothing to do with individualism or 18th century enlightenment
yeah,
or something like that. This is folk individualism. So the
yeah.
folk people
Folk philosophy.
derived inspiration from the tantric Buddhists or the yogis who came to. That's why the yogis put so much emphasis on the preservation of the human body. That's why
Yeah,
there is a joke that Lalon Shah lived for 120 years, but Ram Mohan Roy had a tension-prone life in Kolkata, so died rather prematurely. So,
yeah,
these sort of things are there. Um,
yeah,
Definitely, there are exchanges, but I do not have any evidence to prove that the yogis or the Sahajiya Buddhist or Tantric Buddhist or Tantric yogis were influenced by the Bauls, because the Bauls were influenced by other religious practices, no doubt, but they had their different path. That is the mystical path, and there is also a cultural path, and that path is quite different from the tantric Sahajiyas or the yogis. That's why Lalon Shah would be saying, "Apon sadhana kotha na kohiyo jatha totha." That distinguishes the Bauls from the tantric yogis and others. But there is give and take. But I can only demonstrate that the Bauls were influenced by that. But I cannot demonstrate how it took place the other way around. Thank you for a
okay.
very pertinent
Thank
question.
you. And one question from Dr. Shantanu De, that, sir, can one locate any regional differences between the approaches of Sufi healers in Bengal and other parts of India?
A regional difference between the Sufis concerning what? Concerning what?
That is not mentioned here. Sufi healers in Bengal and other
Oh,
parts of
okay. Yeah. Now, actually, it's a good question. I would not say, I would not put, yeah. Difference is there. Very good question. For example, I'll be very brief and prompt in my response because of the time shortage, time constraint. For example, if you look at northern India, actually, researchers are northern India centric. So if you look at the musical instruments used by the Sufis in northern India and the musical instruments used by the mystics of Bengal, they are quite different. For example, Ektara is used by the Bauls. You will not find that the North Indian Sufis are using Ektara or the
yeah,
Hyderabadi Sufis are using Ektara. For example, the North Indian Sufis used Marcia, which is an Urdu song. but the Bengali Sufis will use jari song, which is quite different, and sometimes it's a seasonal song that is very much familiar with the Bengali environment, not with the northern environment. That is one point. And again, I would say that we should not put much emphasis on the geographical variation so far as differences are concerned. You can put emphasis on the resources available to the Sufis so far as differences are conditioned by the availability of resources. That is number one. Number two is that differences differences can be observed if you look at the attitude of the silsilas. Silsilas, for example, the Naqshbandi silsilas have a different attitude as compared to the Chistis or the Suravardis. So if you look at the differences among the silsilas or differences among the Sufis according to their available resources, you will be able to find out some differences, as I've mentioned, because the Bengali folk singers were not at all rich. That's why they were forced to use a very cheap musical instrument like ektara. But there is a symbolic and significance of ektara. I do not have the time to go into that. But if you give me time, I would have loved to delve deep into that symbolic significance of ektara a little bit more. Thank you, Shantanu, for your